And welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. I am your host, Pastor Plek, and I'm super excited about another show. We're going to recap a sermon from Sunday, and joining us in studio today is none other than Machine Gun Nick. Welcome back, Machine Gun Nick.
Hello.
And then also in studio is none other than Cody Sparks from the Cody Sparks Band. Cody, how are you feeling today over there from the Cody Sparks Band?
It was $1 million.
$1 million. And then also a really, really, really special guest. It's Valentine's Day, so welcome my wife, Adrienne Plekenpol. And we're live right now, so I say hi to all your fans.
Hi, fans.
Happy Valentine's
Hi,
Day.
fans. Oh, boy.
Which was great.
Okay.
All right,
Coming
so,
from the woman who's always full of words.
yeah.
A little quiet over there.
Yeah, how'd that happen? All right, so this past Sunday, we talked about leaders and the wicked within the pyramid of God's fabric of society, starting with the Imago Dei, the family, the community, the marginalized, leaders, wicked, and then remembering God at the top. And one of the things that I had said is that to really connect with and identify with the marginalized, is where we went from this past Sunday, is that you had to identify with people who are maybe not where you're at. So the migrant, you might never have been a migrant. The poor person, you might never have been a poor person, or the orphan or the widow. But God calls us individually to identify with them and then minister to them. And so what I said is like probably the easiest people for me to minister to is the military community, because I was military community. You are a military community. You're one of the people I ministered to, and you came to faith in Christ through the ministry here. And I think primarily because it's an easy thing to relate to, because we can tell stories about war stories, stuff blowing up, people dying, blood all over the place. And it's not a point of like horror and, oh my gosh, that's scary. It's like, oh yeah, haha, me too. And so that was a way to identify with you.
Yes, definitely.
So then when we talk about the migrant, the orphan, the widow, and the poor, there should be a way for us to identify, even if we've never lived that life. And that's where we got to with the scripture that we went through in Exodus chapter 22, where Moses wrote, or God, through Moses wrote, "You shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt." Now, first off, Machine Gun Nick, have you ever used the word sojourner in a sentence?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
When?
Well, that was because I was a Mason, and there is an actual sect of the Masons called Sojourners, and you have to have been like a soldier serving in the armed forces to become one. So, I've heard that term
wow, that's
before.
wild. Okay.
Yeah.
Adrienne, have you ever heard the term sojourner before?
I've heard it.
But does that...
I don't use it.
Yeah, you don't use it.
It's not a regular vocabulary word.
Yeah, it's a temporary resident, someone who lives at a particular place for a prolonged period, or who was born somewhere else, but always thinks of home as not where they're at. So that's really what a sojourner is. And so the way that you treat sojourners is indicative of your culture. But to do that, you had to identify with the sojourners, even though they never actually, like the people that were reading this a generation later didn't actually know what it was like to be a sojourner, because they were at their new home. They always lived in Israel. They got it. But you were supposed to treat those who are different from you equal to, treat them as like your neighbor. In fact, you shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. That was the command from God, which this should get at xenophobia. This should get at racism. This should get all the things. Like, if someone's willing to live according to the law, then you treat him like he is one of you. Does that resonate with you guys, or does that feel weird in any strange way, or anything like that, Adrienne?
I think that's great. I wish that I think that's a great way to live. And I think we are all about that as a country. It's just most people aren't willing to live by the law, and we're still expected to be really accommodating.
Right.
And I think that's much harder. So when I heard your sermon on Sunday, I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great if sojourners came and abided by the law, and like even were respectful of an existing culture and just norms? Like if that was the attitude of like, we're coming into your country, I mean, that's how we are expected to behave when we leave America. But coming into America, that's not the attitude. And so I like that. I think that's great. I think our culture in the U.S. has gotten totally away from that.
Right. It's I would say it totally is different.
Well, I think that begins with legal immigration versus just open the border and let anybody walk in.
Right. And I don't think technically anybody's actually for opening the border, although that's kind of what has happened. It's created a problem for both sides of the aisle. Republicans and Democrats are thinking this is not good. It's just that nobody has a solution that they'll agree to, and so therefore we just let it be open, and that can be frustrating. But that becomes a problem, is because then you'd have people that are not willing to abide by the law, who then aren't willing to assimilate, and so therefore it creates a rift in the fabric of society, and that's where the king or the government was supposed to bear the sword and have borders and have reality for what I think. This is not a border-free policy that they're opting for. This is they wanted the country open for immigration, but you had to be able to assimilate to the law of the land. Now, when they, to be fair, when Israel came into the land, they were called to wipe out those who had other gods and who were in the land, and that was God's providential will for them. And he was very clear that you should make sure that no one remains, because they will influence you to worship other gods, which ultimately happened. And then they were exiled, and the kingdom ended up becoming divided over that. And then Judah got exiled and brought back. Thank God for Jesus. He comes back and saves the day. But the whole premise is, in a culture and society, if someone's willing to live with you according to your law, you should be accepting of them and treat them as yourself. All right. The next one was you should not mistreat a widow or a fatherless child. And if you do mistreat them, they will cry out to me, and I will surely hear the cry, and my wrath will burn. And then the part that I don't want to say made me giggle, because it's not funny, but I was just like, this is such an extreme stance. I will kill you. Like, if you mistreat the widow or the orphan, I will take a sword and kill you, and your wives shall become widows and your children fathers. And nothing helps to relate to the widow or the orphan like having your own children and wife becoming widows and orphans as like that. So any thoughts on that from you guys?
Well,
I mean, it's kind of nice that God is super extreme and clear.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of interpretation on that one. But I also think, one thing I think with God's justice, I don't know if this is really what that is.
Yeah, that's God's justice.
But when I think of, I really believe this, like in my life, among my friendships, I really believe that if you become very judgmental of somebody for something, it's probably a matter of time before God's going to have you walk through a very similar, if not same situation, and get to face the consequence of your judgment. I think it's one thing to observe.
I think that what you're looking at, the Bible verse, however you measure it to somebody else, it'll be measured to you.
Yeah, but I'm not thinking of a Bible verse.
Okay,
I'm
you're just saying
this
is just reality.
Anytime there's been a mom, we all see moms struggle in the general public, and
right.
There's most of the time I'm like, oh man, that's hard, or oh man, I've been there, or oh gosh.
There was a time when you did judge, though.
Oh, for sure. And everything that I for sure have ever harshly judged, I've been in, and there's been situations that have happened to us where I've had friends kind of be silent, and then they walk through the exact same thing.
Yeah. And
I'm like, I can't help but think that when we have a pretty firm judgment on something, I had this one friend, her van was this is just petty, but her van was always real filthy
with stickers,
and it was just gross. They didn't take it was just really gross. And there was this day where they had a bad smell and they couldn't figure out where it was, and she spent forever trying to figure out where the smell was, and she, you vacuum the whole thing, you wash the whole thing, you can't find the smell. And I just remember being so critical that you could ever reach a point. And then lo and behold, there I am. We had a little sliver of marinated chicken from McDonald's. It was a salad that you had fallen in a crack. It was your fault.
Fast and it just falls out of his mouth.
A little sliver, and because it started to grow bacteria, and the whole van stunk, and it was stuck between the cracks in the van, and it took me a while. And anyway, so it's things like that. It's
Right.
like little things. I feel like God has me walk through them. So to me, this extreme example of not loving the widow and the orphan, I'm like, God does, I think, often have us, like when we wrong somebody or when our judgment gets really harsh against somebody, I often think part of his love for us is to then allow us to experience it and realize that we're not really better than we think that we are.
One of the things that's coming up this weekend is the daddy-daughter dance. Because we're live, so I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to invite people to the daddy-daughter. Yeah, this is your plug. But this is an opportunity for us to serve those who are like don't have dads. And so talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my heart behind this, like, primarily is to give dads a chance to come and have fun with their girls in a way that, like, gets to really capitalize on, like, the femininity of a little girl and the desire to get dressed up and to go out and be with her dad, and the masculinity then contrasting of a dad kind of taking her out and, like, getting dressed up and being her date to this thing. So my desire is to kind of model this honor of the little girls, but also the contrasting masculinity, like have both things kind of merge. But in doing so, there's this huge opportunity for little girls that don't have dads. And as a church, our job is to stand in the gap in these situations. And so not only are we like not ignoring these people in society, but we're wanting to do more than that. We're wanting to love them. We're wanting to help stand in the place of a father who's not present for whatever reason, whether he's out of town or whether he's just genuinely just out of their lives. And so what's cool is we have a few signups this year of men who are in relationship with girls that don't have fathers that are getting to kind of stand in the gap there. And it can be kind of weird. Like some people are like, oh, that's totally creepy. I'm like, it
Why would
could
that be
be
creepy?
creepy. It's having a man take a little girl. I mean, generally speaking, you don't put men and little girls together
In our culture, because of,
Right.
we've seen it go horribly wrong.
And so it's been a little tricky to advertise, but we have, like last year, we had a man in our children's ministry who had a little girl in his class that was fatherless, and they had the best time together coming to this thing.
That was
and
really
so
sweet.
I'm like, you're getting an opportunity
Yep.
to take a teenager in our neighborhood. And so and
There's
it's
actually
cool.
2 teenagers that a lady came to a church first time. She has twin girls who are 16. One of them is pregnant, and her dad's the dad was completely out of the picture. But because of this dance, the dad's coming back into the picture to take these 2 16-year-olds to the dance, which I thought was just awesome.
Yep.
And so, like, what you're providing is an opportunity to reconnect. Even if some fathers have been checked out, and bringing them back in. So, man, way to go on such an incredible event. I can't wait to see this whole place. Over 100 people signed up right now.
Yeah, I think we have like 110. It keeps coming in, but
Machine Gun Nick, are you going to come to this?
No.
he's gonna
Oh.
help. Probably.
He's gonna help
He's
tear down.
He's a good worker. So here's the thing: is high school girls are kind of over it, but some are not over it. Some are able. Some are coming, but for the most part, high school girls are not really enjoying the vibe. Because what we do try to do is help dads come who don't really feel comfortable dancing, because most dudes don't really feel super thrilled about a dance. So we do the limbo. We're hopefully going to have a hula hoop contest if we can locate our hula hoops. And we're going to have a parachute, and we have all sorts of fun things planned to help break up the like actual dancing, since that feels a little bit not fun for some dads.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
And DJ lighting services provided by Dr. J Love. It's not a DJ name.
Yeah, I like it. And
Just wanted to be
you get
clear on
paid
that.
by peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
I know people probably think that's a little bit weird, but it's
That's how
me
it goes.
serving. It's me.
Peanut butter
It's
and
me
That
serving.
explains the box PB&Js I saw.
Yeah, that's how he gets
Well,
paid.
that happens. It's good. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
But what
one
about
of
the dads who? Hold on, I got a quick question
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that. So a lot of dads don't dance. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, why?
Well, Cody, you would have more insight.
I personally don't dance because I'm a phenomenal dancer and I like to show off a lot. So I just choose to sit back and watch. I don't want to make
I think
people
that's
feel
how
dumb.
a lot of dads feel that
Probably.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to show off and just I don't
No,
care.
you do. You're just out there spinning.
I can't wait to spin Piper. I'll just let her go. Boom. She might get sick, but You'll
She
probably be good
won't
for
get
it.
sick. She can handle it.
Yeah, all right, good. Yeah, we're gonna have to put her athleticism to the test on about 50th spin. Okay, let's talk real quick then about the last one is the poor. Don't lend to the poor and charge interest. That was sort of this last part, and then God ends this one. Don't do it. And if he cries out to me, the poor person, I will hear, for I am compassionate, which is sort of like the threat. He doesn't necessarily say, like, I will come and kill you with the sword, make you poor. But he just enough of, like, I'm going to hear, and I'm compassionate, and you don't want to mess with me. Have you ever had to say that as a parent?
As a parent?
Like, the threat is, I'm going to find out.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So here's God taking the I'm going to find out factor, and that should be enough deterrent for you to make sure you treat the poor properly. And then the other part of that, which I jumped to, which was with Jesus, because there's the tension of helping the poor. And like, what if you in your help of the poor, you help too much, and then you end up hurting the person.
Enabling, yep.
Yeah. And so like, the person that's under 35 and they're a crack addict and you give them more money for crack, you're probably, giving them a shorter length of time to their death. But Jesus said in Matthew 25, he identifies with a poor person and then says, the way that you treat a poor person is the way that you treat me, which is sort of wild. He says, for I was hungry and you gave me food to drink. I was thirsty, you gave me water to drink, or give me food to eat, water to drink. I was a stranger, you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. And everyone's going to like, when do we do that? And Jesus like, as much you did this to the least of these, you did it to me. And then the flip side, then it say to other guys, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. This is, again, big threats for mistreating the poor. For I was hungry, you gave me no food. I was thirsty, you gave me no drink. I was et cetera, you didn't help. And then they're going to say, when did we not help you out? If we would have seen you, we'd have hooked you up. And Jesus goes, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Cody, how did you grow up with, like, were these verses, because you're a pastor's kid, were these verses, like, sort of, I don't know if they were, like, put up in fear, but, like, did you guys abide by that, like, kind of helping out the poor?
Yeah, because there was people like kind of like you too, all the time. There's somebody coming over, or somebody being at our house, or my parents helping somebody out, and there's always transit people that are, because my parents' church is on the corner of like major highway.
Yeah.
So you have people coming in there all the time asking for food, money, and it's got to a point to where you have to be very like wise about this. You can't just be handing out cash. You can't. So my dad usually would be like, well, I'll take you next door to the gas station and fill you up.
Right.
Or I'll send you to the Panhandle Crisis Center, or we'll take you. But they always make sure that they do something,
right,
instead of leaving people just out to dry.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I think, Adrienne, when you read these verses, how does that make? Does that harden your heart, soften your heart? Does that make you go, oh, he couldn't have really meant that? Where do you go with that when you talk about, like, as you do the least of me, you do to me? Like, straight talk here.
So here's the thing.
Do share.
I don't choose to view it as all the things I could be doing, but instead of how I am doing. So for me as a mom, I'm like, okay, I feel like God's made it very clear that I'm to care for my children, but I don't really like that a lot of the time. But I think and sometimes I feel like it's fine for me not to like it. Like, who cares? But it matters. And it is part of what God has asked me to do. And so when I'm I would consider my children least of these for sure. And so when I hear that verse, I am more focused on the things I'm doing for the people that aren't able to like pay me back. And when it comes to helping people that are like,
because you might get someone saying you're punting on these least of these, but you would say, no, there are some least of these that are in my own house.
Absolutely that. So this will get me fired up.
Oh, good. Don't let get it fired up.
So
here we go.
I think there's a lot of Christians, like, helping the poor is kind of attractive. Like it's
Socially
there's a
cool.
lot of like, yeah, it's like you're a social justice person,
There's
and
gold
you're.
star.
It's like there's some gold star that you get if you're doing a lot of this external ministry to poor people or to underprivileged people. But then I'm like, and I don't really care what you're doing there if your own home isn't.
Yeah,
being
talk about
cared
that.
for.
So what you're saying is, I think sometimes people abandon their own home
Absolutely.
to support people they have no baggage with.
Right. Because you get a dopamine rush when you go help a poor person. You hand them a bag, and whether they throw it back at you or not, you're like, man, I got involved with the homeless. And like, I mean, I've had times before where I bought, there's this family on the street corner by Walmart, and they've been there for like 5 years. But the first year they were there, I thought they were legit. And so I bought them apples, I bought them food, and I gave them to them. And I felt like real good after. I thought, man, I really feel like God used me, and I was really loving these people. And I think I was being obedient to a Holy Spirit prompting. But then I'm like, but I think what happens a lot is you get applause for that, you get seen for that, you get a feel good for that. But then there ain't no gratification when I make my kids dinner and
Nice.
everybody, I mean,
And
that
everybody
is
goes,
miserable. It is miserable. It is work to make the food. It's miserable sharing it with them. And then it is miserable cleaning up after it. And I mean, it's not one part of it makes me feel good. I don't feel satisfaction. I don't feel like nothing, but I feel like I'm like, okay, I'm not serving the least of these for them. I'm doing this for the Lord. So I don't feel butthurt either when my kids are whining about my dinner. I don't care that they're whining about my dinner because I didn't make this dinner for them, quite frankly. I made it out of obedience to this need of caring for them and
Okay,
of
that's
loving
good.
them.
So how do we help? Because I think what we run into is exactly what your point. Like, you know, you have a family that you're caring for, and somebody's got to help out the poor. And how's the church going to mobilize to do that? And what would you tell that person?
So I think that I think I care, right? Like with our kids, God provides opportunities at times, and there are times where there is somebody in our path, in our life that it's easy to say, hey, we're going to give this money, or we're going to give this food, or we're going to. We've bought Christmas for families in the past. Like there's always opportunities presented where we're able to help somebody out, and so I'm always trying to bring my kids along in communication.
I remember one time that you took the kids to an apartment for a benevolence thing. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm. I've done a couple, and one of them, was there was a need for a Spanish speaker to go in and talk to a family that needed benevolence, and so I was like, well, I'm not doing it without bringing my kids in. It was a super sketchy area, and there was a lot of feedback of whether or not that was safe, but I was like, I don't super care about that. I need my kids to come with me and see this and see the home. And
tell me the whole
what
story.
they saw was super fascinating. So the apartment was rough, and the area was very sketchy getting there. I was like legitimately scared at one of the streets that we drove through. But then we get to the complex, and it was a pretty much like all Spanish speaking complex. Like all the signage was in Spanish, and so I was reading it to the kids. And of course, like one of my sons forgot shoes, so we're walking up barefoot. Like,
So
oh, well.
you just kind of
We just joined right in. So we get out to this apartment, and I have explained to the boys that this mom doesn't have money for rent, and that they'll be evicted if we can't help them. And I talked to the kids about the school down the road where the kids are going to school, but this was in the middle of COVID where kids were not in school. Okay, so I was explaining that, and I was explaining how these children are usually able to be fed at school. When we walk in the house, and they had like red soda and Doritos, which is Austin's favorite foods, okay, on the table. And then a kid had his own phone and a Switch that was just sitting there. He was on the phone, but the Switch was sitting on the couch. And we left, and my oldest son, Austin, at the time was just like, Mom, I thought you said they were poor. The kid has a phone. And I'm like, well, yeah. And then he goes, and they're eating Doritos. Like, what's your problem? Like,
why don't we have Doritos?
Like, why don't we have Doritos and
H-E-B
red
brand.
soda? And so I had to have this whole conversation about how, like, this looks like what you're wanting, but this isn't actually the most loving and best environment for any child
Right.
or yourself.
Right.
And we had a great conversation, but I think bringing kids into loving the least of these, but I also think it's important to be loving them. And I think having the discipline to give to something like a benevolence ministry is great.
Let's talk about that real quick. Like, because Zach and Devin at our church have been
Right.
ministering. Talk about that a little bit.
So I think what they're doing is, so the questions I would always have when giving to somebody like on the street is, there's so many like you're not getting a story that's accurate. Like you're just not, even if the person probably is really in need, but the story's probably a lie. And so going through somebody like a benevolence program, you have people asking questions, looking at bank accounts, following up, offering accountability, and not providing repeat Hail Mary requests. It's
Right.
like, we're here to like actually help you. We're not here just to like bail you out and not help you get back on your feet. And so giving to an organization like that is so helpful. And that, again, I have had my kids at times empty out their piggy banks to bring money specifically for our benevolence, separate from our church giving. And so trying to bring them, I think it's super valuable. I just think that as a mom specifically, if you aren't really caring for your own kids and you're not really modeling for them and bringing them along in the effort to love the least of these, but you're running around loving the least of these instead, then I'm like, man, to me, that's a, like, shame on you. That's a, like, God to me has discipline coming for that attitude.
You're essentially
and behavior.
orphaning your children
Right.
for the sake of others. And that's like, this is put on your own oxygen mask
Right.
first.
I feel so strongly about it, and I feel like our Christian culture doesn't do a very good job red flagging that always.
How have you seen that?
I think that we
One of the things you said in the original If gatherings, I think you kind of
well,
got
that was
fired
such
up.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I think as Christian culture, we tend to like, it's very sexy to like, I'm going to the foreign country and I'm selling jewelry that was made in a foreign, I'm like, talk to me about what you're doing at home. And I'm not here to say like I'm doing a lot at home. I'm in a season where I'm like, man, I'm doing really great to have dinner on the table. We're not doing a bunch of devotionals. So I'm not over here acting like I have like this figured out, but I feel so strongly that
The
this,
primary
like,
place.
yes, the primary place for that is in the home. And if you can bring your kids alongside, or if your husband is like thrilled to take them while you go off and do a different endeavor, that's probably great. But to me, it's just never like, I think that there's a lot of encouragement to women to like separate and like, this is your chance and you need some space. And I'm like, okay, that space and time is coming in probably 10 to 15 years. And to me, over glorifying the outreach when you have a home and a family, I have a huge issue with that. And I think among women, it's a big topic. So those are my thoughts about
Wow,
that.
that was
Yeah,
a lot of
lots
Well, what
thoughts.
about just among society now? You have people on like social media like, hey, look, I just gave this to the homeless person. Look at me, aren't I so good? Look at me. And I
But
mean,
sometimes I don't think they're doing that. Some people are doing that to say, look at me.
right.
But I think there are a lot of people that video stuff for maybe support. Like if you're into missions or you're
Yeah.
into this, you have to put yourself out there and say, this is what we do.
Mhm.
This is a result of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And it
That
encourages
does.
them.
Right. I think it's a little
Like,
bit
I
both
love
of that.
watching the videos where the guy gives like $5,000 randomly to somebody and you're like, the gut person starts crying. I love those. I mean,
Yeah.
I could watch those all day.
So I agree with you a little bit on that because there are people out there that do that just to say,
Yeah,
look at
so
me.
so I do love is our benevolence program where our church has given over $40,000 this year.
It's crazy.
To give away, and Zach has the job of meeting with people to give it away and whatnot. So it's kind of exciting thing on that.
Well, but going back to what Nick said, I think Chris sort of hit on this on the sermon on Sunday. I feel like what you suggested that the only people that are able to give from a place of like genuine, sacrificial, empathetic love are Christians.
Right.
You did suggest that, is that right?
Apart from the Holy Spirit, you can't give generously and genuinely without some sort of like, I need to
What's
get
in it for me?
What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to get something out of this.
Yes.
Yep.
Regardless of what that is.
It's like there's our sin nature is selfishly motivated in all we do, including helping people. So without the Holy Spirit, yes, I think it's the same, and I just think it's I think that's true for everybody for sure.
Yeah.
It's not just moms.
So do you have to go now?
No, I feel bad now. I'm gonna like be wrecked with conviction over
Oh, nice.
what I'm not doing with my children.
That's why we talk about things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just get it out
So Machine Gun Nick, how are you being intentional right now with the vulnerable? And that might be just with your kids right now. What those are the kids at home with your ex-wife. How is that? Has that been challenging for you to kind of be there for them?
Yes.
Why is that?
Me and my ex didn't really, I mean, it was definitely a turbulent relationship, and there might be some residual there, is what I'm thinking. Because, I mean, at first, after the divorce, I kind of just looked at it like business, right? You're going into a business meeting. It doesn't matter what you feel. We're not here for feelings. We're here for the kids. All right, try to be there for them. And I'm either changes have been made. I don't know. I feel like the past, There's no,
You now have emotions.
yeah. There's no use living in the past. So who cares? Like whatever. It happened to happen. Got it. Nobody was great. So now I'm just like, I go in there and I'm like, all right, right. You know, like I don't want to feel angst toward the ex anymore. Like, why? That's just stupid. We have kids together and we need to like raise them. And oh, by the way, like my son actually like needs me around right now. He's 9. He doesn't just need mom anymore. And so like, and he said certain things like that. And so I'm like, yeah, this is great. But sometimes my ex, just the way she says something, like, right, or the kind of demands that she'll make, and I'm like, no, but it will take me back down this like roller coaster of, you know, back when, and then like and it like I don't know, it drags me across some things that I'm like, I'm over this, but we're not today, and it's like, oh boy, here we go. And so it's just been kind of like a roller coaster ride of trying to negotiate that with whatever the residual is on her side of things.
Cody, what do you think?
For him?
What should you do there?
Look at yourself first and your attitude, because you're angry man.
Angry man.
I have the same issues sometimes, and I've told you that. But especially if you're telling her that you're a changed person and you want to show them that you're a changed person, then be that. She's not the changed person.
Yeah.
You are. So she's not going to be different. You have to be different. Your reactions have to be different than what she's giving you, because that's not going to change. She's still going to be, and you just have to take it, unfortunately.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
It's a bummer.
How's that make me? I don't like it.
Tell Adrienne what happened. I think Adrienne could speak into it.
Which part? The
Does it matter? Just tell one part of the story.
no
I think
kidding.
I'll try to think. Okay, so let's just say, okay, so I was, you know, Sunday, it was just me and my son at her house, not at mine. We are just playing around. Well, I still have my smoker's cough, right? Apparently that might take a year to go away. So then like Monday, she's like, you got, you know, Brody sick. And I'm like, you don't even know that. And I think that was kind of like the driving point that just like kind of pushed me over the edge, was like this. And none of that's ever, it's always been like that, right? If I have a cough or something, I'm getting everybody sick. Like, and she knows who gets people sick, which is kind of crazy.
I have those people in my family too.
Oh, okay.
They're very enjoyable. Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, just that
I might not be wrong.
kind of quality of like, and you know, and you're just like, wow. And as Cody said, like I was mad for 2 weeks over that.
Yeah, 2
Yeah.
full weeks of just ticked off mad. And I'm like, dude, just kill him with kindness. Hey, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I personally don't feel sick, and I don't think I am. But I mean, I can see. Okay, I'm sorry that I coughed around you.
So what I would say, listen, Cody's right, but no one person can be capable of that
Right.
without dealing with like really spending time to consider like, why is it that it made you so angry? And probably my guess is there's a lack of respect that is happening there. And to me, when I am, especially if I know I'm not sick and I'm accused of making somebody sick, I'm like, okay, well, there's a lack of respect, A, and then B, you're wrong. You're black and white wrong, but yet you're not going to be convinced that you're wrong. And when I'm wrong, I admit it and I apologize. And when I'm not wrong, I still have to take the blame for something where you're wrong. And that for me can be like, that can make you so angry, but it's like, you have to get to a place where you can just let it go. Like, and honestly, there's certain people in my life where I can't do that. I struggle and I have to go exercise. I have to pray. I have to ask God to change my attitude and change my heart. And I struggle the whole time. But there's a lot of coping mechanisms I think are healthy that I'm engaging in to help be able to let go of that more. But I think that to me in an ex-wife relationship, I don't think it's going to get much harder than that.
Yeah, that's why divorce stinks. Is that
Yeah.
it's not like you end the relationship and you never have to deal with them again. That's death. Which I'm not advocating murder, but it's like death is in a sense easier. It's a clean cut. Right. Divorce is a jagged tear where you're always having to go back and
one thing I think helps me like in this process of coping is like even just saying the words like, man, I feel so disrespected that you think that I'm making him sick. And I'm sorry that you feel that way. I feel super disrespected that you're telling me that. And just saying that in a non, accusatory, not angry way, just owning that you feel
not
hurt.
Escalating.
Because I think for me, escalation, that's the word. But I think that if I don't say anything and I just absorb it, like my anger gets so bad that I'm just like, I wish the person would just be dead, or I wish I just could run away. Like it's like I can't process. Like I just need this to completely end. Anyway. So I think that part of my solution in my life has been being the freedom to own how I feel to the person that is causing it, knowing that they're not going to say anything that makes it better, but having the freedom to just at least inform them like, I feel super disrespected that you are telling me that, and move on. And that will help. I think that will help. Yeah.
Wow.
We might have to try that. Mm-hmm. That and I joined the gym with a punching bag.
There you go.
That's way to go.
See, that's what I was saying. When you're with her, be patient and kind of like she was saying, do the things that you need to say, and then go hit the bag. Mm-hmm. But then don't do it in front of your kids. Don't do it angrily. And be the better person. You have to be the bigger person.
Right.
And we all have to do that.
Right. And you have
You're
to
not
do
the
that
only one.
empowered by the Holy Spirit, trusting
Yep.
Jesus is the one that sees whatever wrong is being done to you. He's either allowing it to happen to grow you, to give you wisdom, to build resilience, there's a lot of reasons why you're enduring.
We got resilience, all right? We checked that block a few times. I think.
Yeah. So you haven't had resilience to the point of death, right? So like that's the part where you're still here, and so now enduring, like Jesus on the cross dying. I think that's why every time when you go back to how much do I have to endure? Well, Jesus had to experience hell.
But also resilience is very different. Okay, resilience where you can just take a bunch of hard. That's very different than resilience of like what you're talking about, disrespect, resilience of patronize. Like, okay, this is going to be so hyper spiritual, I recognize.
Oh, wow, here we go.
But in my quiet, I've been in Matthew for my quiet times this week, and there was a whole verse 2 days ago on like the crucifixion, and I was sitting there thinking about how like the insults that they hurled at Jesus, like these people are telling him, they're mocking him for being Lord. And they're wrong. They're so wrong that they're going to burn in hell the rest of their life for how wrong they are. But yet Jesus just like endures that.
Yeah.
Didn't he
And
ask for
forgives
God
yes.
to forgive them?
Yes.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a resilience that's far different from the resilience that you've built over time.
Yeah. I love this one. Remember, Jesus washed Judas's feet and then sent him to hell the next day. He washes his feet on a Thursday. Jesus, and then dies on a Friday. Judas goes and hangs himself, I think, by Saturday. And so Jesus washes his feet, loves him, and then he kills himself. And then Jesus is eternally punishing him as the son of perdition in hell. And so right now, to be Jesus to your wife doesn't mean to excuse her for all the wrong she's done.
Ex-wife.
Sorry, for your ex-wife. But that what it does mean is that Jesus is going to judge. Remember, he says, I will not acquit the wicked.
I have to peace out Valentine parties.
All right, thanks, Adrienne. Well, thanks, Machine Gun Nick, and thanks, everybody, for watching. If you got any questions, you can text us in at 737-231-0605. I'm so glad all of you have joined us, and thank you, a special guest there, Adrienne Plekenpol, for joining us, because that was always more than you bargained for. Hey, listen, thanks for watching, and From our house to yours, have an awesome week of worship.